Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all fandoms, welcome to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 140. I am your one and only host on this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, and I'm bringing you the first podcast of May. And to be honest, I was kind of hoping that we would kind of be out of this 2020 COVID-19 / coronavirus pandemic. It's still unfortunately taking place, and given the, how should I put it, the austerity or the mentality of certain people has really reached a new breaking point in certain countries. In England, it definitely seems to be more the mentality of, I'm ready to get back to work, I really want things to return to normal. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, given that it looks like we are going to be in lockdown for yet another month, which is quite disappointing for a lot of people, myself included, mainly because I had May being as one of the more special months. It was going to be themed around something, going to have special guests coming on. That's kind of going to be cancelled for obvious reasons, which is a shame, but there's always next year. Much like a lot of people, a lot of plans have been cancelled for this year so far, which is super upsetting. But the most we can do is just keep going and just staying safe and staying clean, which is the biggest point. Make sure to wash your hands. I know it's probably really annoying to keep hearing this information, but it really, really is important. If washing your hands is what stops you from, simply put, dying, I think it's worth it. But let's move on to what I've been doing over the last 2 weeks. And I said I was going to watch a lot of films. I didn't. I kind of got a bit lazy. Actually, to tell a lie, I did watch one film. This film was so bad, I'm not even going to talk about it. It was worthless and boring and an absolute waste of an hour and 20 minutes. So I'm not even going to bother. And that honestly kind of put me off watching new films for a little bit. So instead, I was playing games. Finally getting back into a few older games, you know, collecting some trophies. Just generally doing some things I probably wouldn't have had the time to do if I was back at work right now. So at least I've somewhat been keeping myself busy. One of the main things I did, I spent almost 2 days doing this, was going into the Borderlands 3 limited events or limited time events, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to be around forever. The Revenge of the Cartel, which is essentially a map or a challenge or area you can do. You can do it endless amounts of times, and there were challenges linked to it. I basically did all the challenges within the span of 3 days. It kind of made me sick in terms of the repetition, but it was worth it in my opinion to get it out the way and get all the rewards. If you don't know what the rewards are, I would highly recommend just typing in Borderlands 3 Revenge of the Cartel, the heads and the skins, and you'll see why it's kind of worth it, in my opinion, that is. The other thing I did in terms of new things regarding video games was I was finally playing Resident Evil 3 Remake. I finally got my copy. I finally played it. I played it in one sitting. I played it all the way through without any real breaks, you know, and I really liked it. I absolutely really do enjoy this game. Is this game perfect? No. Would I have liked to see some changes in terms of some of the sections in the game? Yes. There are 2 to 3 sections of the game where I was like, not really feeling this, but at the same time, they don't last very long. I've seen a lot of people really, really, really complaining about this game, saying it's, you know, acting out as if it's the worst thing ever. It's not. I'm not going to listen to those people just because they got a review copy early and they're upset, or other people are upset that they paid £50 to £40 for a game that isn't that long. That's your fault, not the game's fault, honestly. To all the YouTubers who are just jumping on the bandwagon, or, you know, just basically being crybabies about it's too short, it's too this, it's too that, they need to shut the hell up, okay? Because it's just a bit silly. It just goes to show how inexperienced they are with video games, with the Resident Evil series as a whole, and I just think it's just a bit pathetic at the end of the day. These YouTubers know who they are. They've been put on my list, and I'm not really going to bring them up again. I'm not going to say their names because I'm not going to make them famous, but it's very apparent who's copying who. Let's just put it that way. I find it very suspicious that in terms of people actually playing the game, there's a variety of people's opinions, but in terms of a set collection of YouTubers, funny how they're all saying exactly the same thing, and a lot of the time it's not making a lot of sense. You can't necessarily pin a whole game being bad on the fact that it's short. That is BS in my opinion. If you want my opinion of the game, I think it's good. It is good because I'm going to acknowledge all the things that make this thing good. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it's still good. It's worth playing. If you're that upset about a short game, don't buy it at full price. You know, don't be like those idiot YouTubers. It is an interesting situation that we have a lot of people sadly complaining about the length of a game, where, in my personal opinion, I would much rather have a short, good game than a long, overblown, bad, filler-based game, because Capcom could have easily done that with this game. They could have added a bunch of rubbish into it to make it longer, and then it would have been really bad. And I'd rather not have that. And also, these people have apparently never heard of quality over quantity. That is apparently something that does not exist in these people's vocabulary or in the video game industry or community in modern day times. But that's my 2 cents on idiots talking about Resident Evil 3. I like the game. I'm probably going to stream it one day. I think it's good. If you liked Resident Evil 2 Remake, you'll probably like this game. I certainly did, and I'm going to play it another few times. I've already beaten it like 5 times, and I'm probably going to beat it another 15 more times because I like it that much. But yeah, that was a bit of a tangent. It's just, I find this whole situation with people complaining about this one game just a bit petty. And like I said before, you people know who you are. But in terms of other things that happened over the last 2 weeks, a lot of stuff was very all over the place. A lot of it was very much, oh, here's confirmation that this is cancelled because of COVID-19. And I didn't really want to rattle off on a lot of those things. I mean, obviously sticking with video games, the Evolution or Evo tournament, the fighting game tournament that takes place every year, is now going to be taking place via streaming / internet / people's netcodes or at their homes, which is a terrible idea because internet connection is very, how should I put it, poor at the moment, especially with fighting games that have very bad netcodes. And obviously the whole not E3 / summer thing that they're going to be showing off new games with is coming very, very soon. Is about a month away, and more people are kind of throwing in their hats to confirm that they're going to be doing the IGN thing or doing the Jeff Keighley thing or whatever. I don't know. It's all kind of random and a bit silly. I don't really care. It's just things are changing and it's all over the place. But there were some trailers to actually talk about, which was pretty cool, honestly. The first trailer I want to talk about, which is probably the most... Actually, I was about to say the most negative thing I have to talk about, but no, it's not. That's going to be Lovecraft Country. This is coming from... Actually, I won't say who it's coming from just yet. This is a HBO series which is starting pretty soon. And it's really funny that people are still just taking the word Lovecraft and just slapping it off on anything and just going, yeah, that will sell. Given the reputation of H.P. Lovecraft, his storytelling, his creations, and the fact that he was a blatant racist and homophobe is quite interesting in modern day times. It's also very interesting that this show even exists, given the 2 people attached to it. We have Jordan Peele, who obviously is still pretty hot right now, obviously coming off Get Out and Us, as well as some other projects I'll get to in a second. But the moment I was watching this trailer, I was okay with this series for what it was, you know, just, you know, Louisiana-esque, you know, mostly black cast, you know, dealing with maybe some supernatural horror stuff going to the, you know, aforementioned Lovecraft Country, whatever that's meant to be. And, you know, I was down for that. It looks stupid, but I was down for that. It looked okay. The moment I saw J.J. Abrams attached to the series, I clicked off the trailer. No, I'm joking, I didn't. I essentially thought to myself, I'm not going to waste my time on this series just for a disappointing and confusing ending that only serves as a poor sequel bait / universe setup. I'm not going to waste my time with it. J.J. Abrams is a hack in terms of writing, storytelling, story structure. He hasn't really done much that has really lived up to the interest or the suspense or the general intrigue. And the fact that he's attached to this just spells disaster. Also, you have the fact that Jordan Peele is attached to this series. Really awesome creator, writer, producer, director, whatever you want to single him out as. He doesn't work well with long continuous stories. That's very apparent. With the Twilight Zone series he did, it's not great. He did another like YouTube series where I think he produced or exclusively produced. He oversaw the project. That was not great. It's so forgettable. Not even I can remember its name. I'm sure if you look up his I don't know, portfolio or whatever you want to call it, filmography, you'll find it. But it's basically been buried because it's just whatever. He works much better with smaller, contained stories and worlds, which is what this series could be. The fact that he's been paired with J.J. Abrams here, now they're not directing it, they're kind of like overseeing it, producing it, you know, that kind of thing, basically funding it, doesn't bode well, because you can already kind of see it being very disastrous in terms of its very corny and hokey kind of mentality. It's trying to take itself very seriously, but at the same time it just looks like an absolute joke, especially given the special effects. And it just looked kind of lame once you kind of... I mean, J.J. Abrams' name just ruined it for me, honestly, because I'm not interested. I know what I'm going to get now. If it was just, you know, produced by Jordan Peele, I'd be like, okay, I'll bite. But no, we have this stupid thing. And also, how much do you want to bet that the very pretty white people in this series are behind it all? Because that's just very obvious, and it seems like we're kind of divulging into a very new trend that isn't boring. How many times are we going to do the white people are evil, or white people starting the cult, or, you know, whatever you want to call it? It's just kind of getting a bit old. When Jordan Peele does it, he does it in a very interesting way. You know, take an example, Get Out or Us. He does have some themes that is dealing with race and dealing with culture, but both of them have been doing them in very interesting and different ways. Here, it doesn't look like anything new. It just looks like black people are popular, which is a shame to some extent. Yeah, I didn't really care for this, but I wanted to mention it because I know people are going to see Lovecraft and they're going to freak out over it and they're going to defend it, because obviously anything that has a predominantly black cast is immediately good, no matter if it actually is good, and it kind of seems to be devoid of criticism, which is the society and culture we currently live in. There are few people who do live in this world who kind of seem to be exempt from any kind of criticism as of right now, but times are changing. Moving on to the next trailer, we have a really interesting one which I had to talk about because I want more people to know about this film, and that is called We Are Little Zombies. This is a Japanese pseudo maybe musical comedy. It's definitely an oddball film, and I can really see it being a cult classic in years to come. It does feel like a breath of fresh air given what it's about. And what it's about. It does have a slightly morbid kind of basis where it essentially focuses around a few children who become orphaned because their parents pass away and decide to form a band because of said connection all of them have. It's very neat and interesting, and what really sets this film apart is essentially its sense of style. It does have a interesting flair in which you could kind of like pin it as, oh, that's Japanese filmmaking. But what's interesting here is it's not coming off as like flashy or trying too hard that you've seen a lot of other films, especially coming from Western directors, like trying to be like really cool and edgy and all that kind of stuff. You know, I can clearly see what's happening on screen, unlike other films that just try and shove animation and filters and all that kind of rubbish in your face. I think of Suicide Squad or the Harley Quinn film, where it just tries way too hard to be, I guess, hip or interesting, and it just fails immediately. This film I completely get, and I can see that there is a direction, there is an originality in the visuals that is hopefully enhancing said story and everything else that kind of works, hopefully in this film's favor. It is very tricky to pull off, like, incorporating multiple kind of visual styles, such as, there's, although you don't really see it, but I've heard there's scenes of animation in there, kind of elements that do take from video games to an extent, which is also very interesting, and it does look like it can kind of pull it off, given that the film is kind of going for a more hyper-real like look or hyper-real reality. I'm not really sure how you put it exactly, but it definitely looks like we'll be entering a different world to some extent. I can't think of the right words to explain it, but when you see the trailer, link in the description and download link, maybe you can kind of form the words I'm trying to say, because it's not coming to me. I should mention I have a really bad headache at the moment. I'm not feeling too great. I almost didn't even record this podcast because, yeah, I feel rough. But yeah, I mean, it's got such an odd and interesting story with lots of potential to really say something and do something. Like, it was hinted at in the trailer that maybe said companies or record labels are going to use, the loss of these children's parents as a selling or marketing gimmick, because obviously that sells, tragedy sells, loss sells. Just look at the news right now. And I think that would be pretty interesting if they do kind of focus on that kind of stuff, because it has happened, especially in the Japanese music industry. That is a big selling point. A lot of your favorites, let's say J-pop, K-pop bands, do have a said gimmick. It's mostly kind of become a more generic thing of, they're pretty, or they're pretty, or their music has a certain style, or it's all about fashion. One example I can think of which this film might be referencing is a couple years ago, I think a music industry or music company or label formed a girl band in which all the girls were in debt, and they were forming this band in order to raise money or make money to pay off said debts. And that was obviously a big marketing gimmick. I don't know if it worked out for the girls. Hopefully it did. But, that's just one example in which everyone is kind of just made out to be a character or a gimmick, which I think is interesting, especially if a film actually dives into this. Even if it just mentions it, that will be way more introspective than what your favorite artist is pretending to say. Also, their fashion and their image and their music is rather different for the most part. You only kind of see it, but they have like this really weird, almost anime/cartoon-esque like outfits towards the end of the trailer, or when they kind of become a band, because they kind of start out just in their school uniform. And it's going to be very interesting to see that kind of transition, what comes about that. Is there any meaning behind it? Is it the record label going, you need an image, you need a style, you're the one who wears this or does that? I hope that all has some kind of bearing on the story, and it definitely is very interesting, even if it doesn't necessarily come through and it does just become a very silly kind of wacky comedy, because there are very comedic elements. It does kind of make light of loss and death in a very odd way for the most part, and it is kind of odd that this seems to be a film about selflessly exploiting death for money and fame, which is not the first time it's ever happened. It's happening right now. But that'd be pretty interesting if you can kind of add a, once again, comedic spin on something so ridiculous as that. Oof, sorry, a bit warm in my room at the moment. The last trailer I want to talk about is one that's kind of been hyped up to some extent in my world. I've seen Warner Brothers kind of teasing at maybe this was happening, and Warner Brothers is still teasing things annoyingly. And I'm not going to go into every trailer that was released regarding HBO Max, which I guess is another streaming service that HBO/Warner Brothers has, because they need more for some daft reason. And I'm going to be talking about just this one trailer, because all the other trailers they showed I didn't really care for or really want to talk about. They didn't mean anything to me. And that one is, of course, going to be Looney Tunes cartoon, or cartoons. And this was odd because, like I said, they kind of been teasing at this. I'd seen animations that people have obviously done regarding characters, and I was like, okay, so there's going to be a new Looney Tunes cartoon. There's also meant to be a new Hanna-Barbera cartoon coming to HBO Max at some point, which still haven't seen, but I'm interested in. And although it's nice that they're somewhat staying faithful to the original animation, if this is it, I would rather have something like new and fresh, like the Looney Tunes show or Wabbit, a Looney Tunes production, which were series that did something different, maybe not successfully, but did something different with the established characters, whether that would be actually giving them more character, try and make them more relatable, more human, or essentially just add new mechanics and rivals and other things that, you know, could work against other characters. And I was honestly super disappointed in mainly the presentation of this series. Now, I'm not even going to get into the voice cast of this series. I was someone who grew up with the original run of the Looney Tunes, so I know what every character sounds like. And obviously, these characters do not sound anything like how they're meant to sound, but, you know, I'm going to put that aside because that's not really fair. But see, I can't even really, like, I'm almost getting angry and I'm trying not to get angry. Why the hell did they change Bugs Bunny's gloves to yellow? His gloves have always been white. As far as I can recall, there isn't a version of Bugs Bunny in visual form where his gloves have been yellow or other than white. I do not understand what change has come of this. If there's a reason, please let me know. I'd like to know. But I don't think there is going to be a reason good enough to justify a change like that. Bugs Bunny is one of the most iconic things in all of culture and history, and you've made such a bizarre change like that. And I'm struggling to understand what's going on here because the series itself has a very bland and ugly color palette or scheme. It downright looks ugly at points. Like, it's not bright, it's not interesting. It, like, to be honest, it honestly looks like an animation error, like it's not been finished, like someone has colored something incorrectly, or that someone has never seen the character of Daffy Duck, because his legs and his beak are red. They're meant to be a orange or a darker orange. They're almost red. I don't understand it. It looks ugly, and it's really upsetting because you're trying to be so faithful to the series, yet you've made all these pointless changes and all these mistakes. Now, I do not know if this is like a mistake or what the hell is going on. This is very frustrating, especially given that there was a random animation of Daffy Duck behind the Warner Brothers logo with a cameo from Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, and his colors are correct. So I have no idea what the hell is going on. Like, seriously, just type in Mortal Kombat Scorpion Daffy Duck animation and you'll see exactly what I mean. It's literally an animation that is no longer than 30 seconds, but Daffy Duck sounds and moves and is colored correctly. What the hell is going on here? Like, it's generally frustrating. If there is a reason for the change, fine, but here it just doesn't make any sense. It seems absolutely pointless and it was very frustrating. Clearly, Warner Brothers was not prepared to put any money into this, and if someone is making these pointless, silly little changes just because they're like, oh, this is my series, they need to piss off, because that's stupid. You don't do stupidness like that. That's as if, imagine if Cartoon Network brought back Adventure Time and then randomly Jake the dog, who is typically yellow, is now orange. Like, why would you do that? Everyone knows, like, you know, I'm not even going to waste my time on this. This is just like an absolute piss take. Honestly, I know this sounds a bit silly getting upset about a change in color, but it's just a bit pointless and there's no rhyme or reason behind it. I don't mind change if it's for a reason, but when it's pointless, that's when it gets on my nerves. Stupid. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. What do you think about the change of Bugs Bunny's gloves from white to yellow? Does it bother you? Let me know. email me at raccoonplusfriends@gmail.com. I can't be the only one who is wondering why they did this. But anyway, moving on, let's try and wrap up this podcast discussion. We are going to do the final episode, episode 3 of finding new things and ways to keep yourself sane during COVID-19. This one's going to be a tiny one because I don't assume you've watched and done everything I've mentioned in the last 2 episodes. And in terms of things that are free to watch right now or limited time things, they're kind of running out. And I'm not going to be doing episode 3 because I think people have enough and can do enough and have kind of figured out how to keep themselves entertained long enough. So it's just a few tiny things just to add to the list that I've given you. So just a little sprinkling, basically. So films on all 4, if you live in UK, you can watch films there for free as long as you have an account. You have films like the Valerian film. I think it's Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. That's on there now. They've literally just put that up there just as of recording. I've heard the comics are better, but if you want to watch a film, there you go. A Field in England is on there as well. Go watch that film as well. Bone Tomahawk they've added is up there right now. They put it back up there. Go watch that if you want to see a nice mix between horror and Western style films. So there's 3 more films to watch, as well as all the other films that they probably have on there and films that I've mentioned in the past. I'm not going to do video games because I think that's a little bit self-explanatory. TV, the only thing I'm going to recommend via TV, and this is one that, given the fact that no one really listens to this podcast, is probably going to expire by the time anyone even listens to this podcast. So if you're an early bird, congratulations, but if not, sucks to be you. Space Patrol Luluco, the whole series, which is just over an hour long, from Trigger Studios, who did Gurren Lagann, Kill la Kill. They put the whole series up on YouTube for you to watch until the 6th of May 2020. It's going to be taken down from then. So as of this podcast going up, you have 2 days to watch it. So if not, go watch the series if you missed it. And with music, I'm going to be recommending the YouTube channel / I don't necessarily what to call them, the industry, the collective Boiler Room. Over the course of the last 2 months, they've been doing their Streaming from Isolation series, in which they've been having DJs and artists essentially producing and making music via live stream. They usually have them go as live stream and they're uploaded later. They have a good, as of right now, maybe 25 to 35 videos you can go and watch. Obviously, this is artists from all different genres and mediums. They are mostly DJs who are playing dance, house, funk, soul, but there are other people who have done surprising ones, and I'm pretty sure you'll probably find an artist you've maybe heard of or maybe know of, given that they are not going to be slowing down anytime soon. So I'm going to recommend that. If you want to hear some music while you are keeping yourself busy, definitely check out Boiler Room Streaming from Isolation. And that's pretty much going to wrap up this podcast. Sorry I got a little upsetting, or I got a bit angry towards talking about the Looney Tunes cartoon. It's just, you don't do stuff like that. But I'm not going to bang on about it anymore. We're going to talk about the video of the episode, which is going to be a really sweet and funny and emotional little short film by Michael Shanks, and that is going to be Rebooted. Obviously, I've put the link to it in the description and the download link, and I won't really say what it's about. I will say it's just under 13 minutes, and if you know your films, this should definitely be a nice kind of chuckle, or however essentially you want to read this to some extent, but enjoyable and fantastic nonetheless. And that's pretty much going to wrap up this podcast, the first podcast of May. I have some good news to kind of share with some guys. I was able to get some other extra content for this podcast recorded, which you will hopefully be hearing over the course of this month. I was able to, and have been keeping up with all my friends and all the people who generally appear on the podcast. Everyone, as of right now, is safe and doing well, in case you were wondering. And yeah, we should actually have some discussions coming up in the future. And hopefully by the time we've heard those, I will hopefully be joined by someone in the flesh. But until then, I guess I will wrap this podcast up like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.